And hello, everyone. Welcome to our next painting webinar, First Dogs. You have no idea how super excited we are to be here. Sorry, it's just the technology is just like stupid. I'm sorry. We're recording. We have an amazing group. You guys are incredible. We just want to compliment you for being here. I loved, we love the images. We love the images already that you selected. And speaking of we, hello, partner in crime, Jen.
Hi. Hi, friends. Julio, real quick, did you see the video I sent you last night of Kelly Clarkson and Jill Biden?
No.
Okay, I'll send it again. I'll put it in our, I don't know if I can put video.
Yeah, you can put videos in the folder.
Okay, cool. I'll put a video in the folder. It's really cute. It's just it's on Kelly Clarkson's talk show, and she's at the White House with Jill Biden, and they're in what I think is their front yard, but who knows, with the dogs, and it's just literally them playing with the dogs, and it's really cute. So I'll put
perfect. So we'll perhaps during the break or something, let's play the video and then and relish on this amazing coincidences that always happen when we decide to paint something.
Yeah, like Laura says, you were on it. You were.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't catch it, but yes, upload it and then we'll play it later. So, and thanks so much for being on the other side. So, okay, so let's just get it started. Like right away, we'll give you another extra minutes after, obviously, and thanks for your patience. But I just selected my image, and I'm gonna go right away because we have a lot to say. First of all, my choice, not that I have to justify it, sorry, my choice of image. So, and second, the first challenge that you guys, we think we are going to encounter. But yeah, so last night or between last night and this morning, sorry, I was trying to find images of Champ and Major, and because this is kind of like recent, I guess recent. There are not that many, so there's some images, and mostly they're not perfect shots. So we just uploaded whatever we were able to find and compile, and hopefully during the next 4 years we're gonna have like more. But I feel like this is such a wonderful way, not only to welcome furry beings, four-legged, creatures in the presidential residence, thank goodness, but also to close chapters, to turn pages. So I feel like it's almost like a healing, if I may say this, for me at least, it's a little bit of a healing painting, down with the awful, inhumane past, and let's just welcome, for whatever it's worth, because we don't even know how long that's gonna last, this next chapter, next American chapter, represented by these two beautiful animals. So what I do is sometimes, as you know, I like to pick up messages from the universe, and sometimes a friend of ours, Jen, she's your friend too, she has this thing about reading license plates and then making life decisions based on messages on license plates. And I love that. So it's Megan, by the way, Jen. I don't know if you knew that.
I was like, who is it? Who is it?
Yeah, it's Megan.
No
it's
way.
Megan.
That's hilarious. I mean, honestly, I love that.
Yeah.
It really fits her.
And by the way, she's an artist and she's amazing, and she's a friend, and we work together. She's a teacher, and she's incredible, and she's such an incredible creative being. So when she told us that, we were like, okay, we want to be part of this club. So because of that, not only, I mean, I haven't checked any license plates to make this decision, but I use like an online random generator number. So because I'm at a loss, I see all the images and I really don't know exactly. And usually I love chatting with Jen and then deciding, or let her decide for me, or sort of like having the images and then as if they were like cards in a deck. And you know that, Jen, I like to pick one up and let kind of like the muses and the creative angels decide for me. But in the absence of this human contact and materiality, what I do is I just put random number generator almost every time. I just got this, which I think it's a little bit challenging, but if the universe says so, I'm gonna go for it. So the first thing is how to translate and reformat, retrofit. I love this word also. The image on one specific format, whether it's digital, whether you're using an iPad or a screen or an iPhone or any other kind of like screen or digital format, onto your new format. And this is going to be more challenging than usual because some of the images contain a lot of stuff. They contain figures. The dogs are not centered, or they may be cropped. So we'll have to, more than any other portraits, we'll have to decide what kind of composition we want. In addition to that, I know that two of you chose the same image, but with different cropping. The lovely image of the two dogs' heads side by side. It's such a wonderful image. And one, it's fully on view. They're both on view. And I think, Laura, yours is kind of like cropped. So analyze, assess, and try to make creative compositional choices. You don't have to just feature everything you see. Decide if you want the figure in or out. And there's going to be a lot of creative decisions that are going to get involved in the retrofitting between one format to the other format. I'm using 12 by 16. Three things about the format: the size, the orientation, and the shape. So this is rectangular, this is 12 by 16, and I'm doing like landscape orientation just because the image, it's more like landscape. And then I'm just gonna make sure that I talk about the two most important compositional, and this is from this book, you know, The Art of Teaching Art. I got it like a long time ago, and then it's very traditional and very purist, but there's a whole chapter about compositional principles. We went over those principles in one of the tutorials, and the two most important principles that are a must and very important are how many focal points you want. And perhaps on this webinar, we will need to decide how many focal points we want, and I'll define those. And also the movement around the focal points. So already so much retrofitting, focal points, number of focal points, movement, what is all that? And I will tell you, focal points are the centers of attention inside of a composition, the things that receive the most attention. So in my case, I have like clearly two focal points. So there is the portrait of one face, there's the portrait of another face, and I think that's fine. I can see also this green on the back. It reminds me a little bit of Berthe Morisot's paintings. We have two on the shared image folder, one of our favorite painters, period, and one of the best impressionist painters at the time. So we talked about the greens and Berthe Morisot. So one of the things that excited me about this image is the amount of green. So perhaps this could be my third focal point. Traditionally, based on that mini Bible of orthodox principles in painting, it is recommended not to exceed 3 focal points. The minute you exceed 3 focal points, you start weakening your entire painting, just because I'm using the word weakening very consciously, just because it takes away from the rest of the focal points. So the more you add, the more the attention gets spread between different elements. And whether we like it or not, people look at images maybe half a second and then they just move on. We live in this kind of culture. So let me just kind of like continue doing this and talking at the same time. So I'm going to set up my parameters. So the parameters are the top or the limits of my focal points. Movement is how much distance we leave between focal points and edges. I feel personally there's been an improvement. Here's the Russian teacher, ballet teacher. There's been an improvement in everyone's work regarding the thoughtfulness of composition. So I just want to compliment everyone for being thoughtful regarding focal points and movement, because it makes a huge difference. So I'm just going to set up the top. So that means that I'm not going to go above this, and that's going to be enough room between the focal point and the edge. And then this is going to be a little bit more random. I like the space between actually, I'm just going to use a small brush since I have this, and I'm going to actually just measure from the shoulder all the way to the edge, because I feel like this is 16 and this is 17 from edge to edge. So I'm just going to set up my edge of the shoulder based on the distance that I have, like right here. So this, I'm working on the scaffolding. If you notice, I'm not doing any potato shapes yet, but I just want to make sure that I get, this is a little bit higher. I can go a little bit higher rather than making points point blank, which is so hard. And, you know, there's nothing here to anchor what we draw. I always try to find things that feel a little bit more, a little bit stronger reference wise. So I can measure things between edges and corners or sides of the image, and that helps me set up the scaffolding. A scaffolding differs from, I think that's the word, from a grid, in the sense that it just a little bit more customized to the image that I'm working on. But you can just use the grid, and that's the same principle. A grid is nothing but something that supports our orientation on the format that we're working on. And a scaffolding, that's what I call it. It's similar, but more customized to the image that we're working on. So now that I have this, perhaps I'm just going to do a couple more. The height of the shoulder. So I know these lines will move and things will look a little bit different. A scaffolding within the scaffolding, the distance from the shoulder to the head. So that's another one. Again, I'm avoiding points of contact because it's sort of like pin. It's kind of like the game Pin the Tail on the Donkey sort of thing. And I don't even know if I'm doing the right analogy, but yeah, I'd rather not play that game with a blindfold and just use some physical measurements as much as I can. So here we go. I'm gonna do my potato shapes because I know that I got, what's a potato shape? A potato shape is a broad silhouette, amorphous, general, not really specific. I'm just gonna do another scaffolding, measuring this from the edge. So this one right here. Okay, that's good. That allows me to contemplate and reflect on how big the focal points are within the format and where they are located. So I think it's important that we understand that it's not definite, final, and it just doesn't, oops, and I'll think I'll need to interpret the ear. I don't even know how that's gonna work out because, but that's okay. All right, so this is my silhouette. It's easier to just do the silhouette and no structural lines inside before you start breaking up the main silhouette into smaller areas, just because once you start breaking up and doing structural lines, it becomes harder and harder to make changes. And since these lines will move around constantly, the more elements I add, the more I'll be able to see if those lines feel integrated or not. So why do I want to make things complicated from the get-go when I can just do the silhouette first? And what I'm doing right now that I have the shape that I'm comfortable with, the location also that I like, I can go back to the silhouette and just my focus, my attention right now, I'm going to try to articulate what I'm doing, is strictly focused on the line that I see determining the focal point. And I'm being sincere right now. I am not thinking this is the portrait. I'm not associating my lines with anything recognizable. I am just focusing on exactly a narrow and very specific part of this image source, which is what this edge actually looks like and how it acts. And this associating our observation from what our mind wants to think and judge and everything is so helpful to avoid getting caught up in a frustrating emotion of thinking that what I'm doing doesn't look like anything, or it's not really resembles like anything. So I just try to be as rational, I guess, oh my gosh, as possible. I think that's okay. So I don't need the structural lines, I mean the scaffolding right now. And then what? So I'm gonna go inside and do my structural lines. What is a structural line? Once I have a potato shape that I molded a little bit further, and I usually mention or bring up the analogy of this line. Imagine this line, it's a malleable sculpture wire, an aluminum really malleable wire. And with our hands, we can truly manipulate the curves and the angles and the breaking points of this line very easily. And that's one of the reasons why I love to reflect and spend time moving that line before I just jump in. So now that I have this a little bit molded, what I'm going to do is look at the structural lines. Structural lines are lines within the silhouette that break up the silhouette into smaller fragments. A clear structural line would be the rest of the face of this figure. A clear structural line would be the silhouette around this darker shape. Another structural line would be the separation between the arm and the forearm and the back of the palm and the shirt. So these are lines that are clearly breaking up, fragmenting, deconstructing the main shape. So let me just get a little bit of help from the brush. I'm doing some scaffolding right now, and then just a basic silhouette. This will be so challenging, but that's okay. I love. All right, so here it is a little bit, and then I'm just gonna do a silhouette. And this is Major. Yes, Major meaning the dog. Okay, so this will be my second structural line. It's a little bit lower than the chin, so I'm just gonna try, and this is aligned with the head. So okay, here we go. So ways to bring relationships. I don't trust my mind to make those calls. So what I do, I just follow the crumbs or drop some crumbs. I love the this idea of dropping and following crumbs. Okay, so this will be my approach to this. And the back seat, I think that's important. It's very Berthe Morisot. The chair, I just want to bring the chair a little bit. So I think that's good. Yep, so I'm excited. I'm happy. This is working nicely, I feel, even though it's very broad and general, but I think that's what I'm talking about. I have time, 5 minutes. Maybe I can do some lines within the lines. So let's do that. I have 2 figures, so it means that I won't be able to spend as much time with each one as I would want. So there's going to be a little bit of a compromise, but that's okay. So let me just start with the figure of Major. Structural lines inside. the mark, flickering my eyes back and forth. So this is the reason why I like to start with silhouettes, because then it's easier to draw within a silhouette than to kind of like start with like point blank, the eyes of the dog. I don't know where they're gonna fall in comparison with the rest of the image. So if I start drawing the one section, and I hope you guys encounter this problem, because unless you experience it, you won't be able to recognize that this is possibly a challenge to consider for the next sketch and the next painting. But we start with one part of the dog, and then we expand from that point. What happens when we draw from one single point and we expand? We completely lose control of the format. So I could have started with this and then move bigger and bigger and bigger. But what happens is that I completely disregard the orientation, the size, and the shape of the format. So I have no idea where the rest of the drawing is going to fall within that format. And then we have this strange empty spots or things kind of like floating and not being cropped. And there's nothing wrong about that. It's just a signal that we have not taken into account the format that we're working on. And what else is more important than the format when we start reformatting or translating things? I mean, that's our space. That's our working area. That is where the action will happen. That's the stage of everything. So if we don't, it's like decorating a room without knowing the size, the orientation of things, where the window is, where the door is, and just getting a California king and a big armoire, and then you know, a table that sits 10 people. It's not gonna fit. What are you gonna do with that room? It's just gonna look silly and not controlled. Look at the stage, the space, your working area. It's the most important thing you can do for your painting. I don't care if this is done in whatever style you want. It doesn't matter the style, honestly. But being thoughtful about the space that you're going to work, that you're working with, is the most important and fundamental thing that you can do to create a painting that's intentional and strong, purposeful, and yeah, again, strong. And we talked about it last night. We did a studio time, and we talked about how viewers of our work, and I'm going to be almost like demeaning in the sense that they're not able to articulate the things that they feel when they see a painting. They just feel. We just feel. We feel all sorts of emotions and tantalizing. I think that's the word. You know, emotional things when we see a piece of work. It is our job as painters to actually articulate how we want to direct the viewer's emotion. So we have to be aware of things like principles of composition, movement, alignments, because even though the viewer will have no reason to think of this, they just want to experience. We know that this will be affecting the viewer's emotion. All right, all that to just say, please, please, please consider the working area. So right now, even for the purposes of enjoying your process a little bit more and not getting in the mode of like doing one step forward and 10 steps back. So get your silhouette anchored in your working area, and then you can just spend more of an enjoyable time just bringing some other details, having a little bit more of an ease, rebuilding or repeating things that you've done, being less invested in, what's the expression? Be all, I don't know, Jen, can you help me with that? I always struggle with that.
Be all, end all.
Yeah, the be all and end all, meaning like, you know, the lines that you put, being the be all and end all of the entire, I don't know if I'm using that right. I will not go to grammar heaven. I will tell you that, but I don't care. All right, so I see the color. I think that's really great. I'm just gonna add it. I think, why not? I'm just gonna add it. I think that's good. And then I'm just gonna, on the portrait, again, I'll have to simplify. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna do the keystone. I'm gonna do the axis line. And I'm gonna do the hairline, the three most important structural lines on a face: hairline, chin line, and the neckline if the person's wearing clothes. So I think that's gonna help me get the orientation. And I'm just gonna get the eye line too. So it's a little bit lower than I thought. So there we go, eye line, the nose, the mouth, just really broadly. I'm working super fast, and a little bit of the neckline. So the three most important things. I'm just going a little bit faster, and I'll be able to move things around. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start doing some shading, because darker to lighter. And the idea here is to move beyond the linear aspect of our sketch and start transitioning into something that feels more like an illusion of volume and perspective. At the same time, articulating the scale or the gradation of the shadows and highlights will give us also a sense of order in our composition. And I'm going to get some water really quickly. If you are already kind of like done with the sketch, with the shading, you can start like washing and staining. Here we go. Oops. Darker to lighter, and I'm using the side of the charcoal. And the idea here is to just block out and fade the linear work onto a shape. So it becomes less linear, and that means less flat. And start bringing that illusion, the illusion of volume and space. Okay. It's getting warmer. Is it getting warmer, Jen? Do you think? Or
yeah, it's been, I don't know about as in today, but the weather has been warm. Ugh.
The weather what?
The weather has been warm. Yuck. I think the wind's supposed to start again tomorrow and Sunday.
Oh, stop.
Valley. Yeah.
Oh man.
At least valley wind. I don't know. You could be in a totally different world.
I will check that out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, another thing that now I'm realizing, and that I haven't thought of, but that's another reason why using the shading is so helpful. I can see now the light direction. So that's something that I need to identify. And I'm identifying it based on the cast shadows that I see. So I think that's important, because when I start, this is a little bit darker. All right. This may be, I think it's going to be an interesting painting. You know, this is something that happens. Sometimes the more challenging the painting, the more rewarding it is, or at least the process. And the simpler the painting, the more difficult and challenging it becomes. All right. And then I'll just use a little bit of this on the background. I'm gonna bring some elements. I like the different layers on the background. Yeah, I think that's good. I could do so much more, but you have to make a distinction between sketching and drawing. There's always this step, especially because charcoal is such a wonderful, rewarding material, or yeah, very, and also very forgiving, that it pulls us. It just, when we start growing or creating something and we're able to mold it, repeat it, edit it with such flexibility, there's something about that that in a subconscious way makes us feel comfortable, and or at least we start feeling a little bit more comfortable than when we start from scratch. And by all means, that's not measurable. It's just sort of like a feeling of already being engaged with the process, and the medium allowing us to make like changes. And what happens? So we feel like we want to spend more time, because you know, who doesn't want to hang out in a mode or a situation that provides comfort? And then we start turning the sketch into more of a drawing. I make a distinction between sketching and drawing just because sketching, it's more like planning, and giving us an idea, and drawing just becomes something a little bit more formed. Check out your angles, inclinations. We tend to make things like really close to horizontal or vertical, but they're not exactly like that. And squint your eyes, that's a good idea as well. Squint your eyes. I think that's okay. I'm just gonna leave it like here. I know that there's so much more that I can do. And again, the concept of disassociating from an idea, you know, our minds will be in constant battle to tell us what to do. And let me kind of like explain that. So our mind is always on guard, on standby. And the minute we do something, our mind will just jump in and say, oh, this doesn't look like a dog. This is not Joe Biden. My gosh, your arm looks so weird. You forgot to. So that's like a nonstop tape that plays constantly. And I feel like as artists, I would say it takes years, but I'm a work in progress, and I try to make sure that that tape doesn't play. So disassociation doesn't mean like I'm cutting myself in half and then becoming like two different people. It means that I'm asking my mind to sit down and stay quiet, and I'm engaging my observational capabilities, my eyes, my observation period, in order to make decisions, creative decisions, measuring, aligning. That'll be a time when I can just start thinking about more subjective elements and ideas. But I'll tell you, it's not now. It's an exercise in avoiding getting distracted, and the distraction, instead of being outside a phone, someone calling us, or you know, someone requiring our attention, it comes from within our mind saying, you know what, this is not good. You're failing. This looks infantile and premature, and it sucks, and you will never be able to blah blah blah. And this is a tape. It's on a loop, you guys. And I feel like creating is a way of confronting that tape, and over time being able to sit still and avoid that distraction and move forward. All right, how about that? I'm so happy about this, and I'm ready to stain, and it's not too bad, you know, 30, 40, 20, 40 minutes. Yeah, 40 minutes, I'm sorry. So the palette is on the email. Thanks, Lois, again for that. And now I'm just going to use a big brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of turpentine and a single. I have so many colors here. Mostly, no, not mostly. I have cool temperatures and warm temperatures. What do I do? Well, let's kind of like start one step at a time. Using the mineral spirits, and this seems like it's Van Dyke Brown. So I'm just gonna guide myself. I don't have to be specific or match any colors, but since we have two blacks, so what I'm gonna do is flicker my eyes back and forth, use the big brush to kind of like roll the pigment on top. And what is a wash or the staining? The staining stage is when we prime the surface and seal the charcoal. It's a very technical step. It's not the final step. No one's going to see this stage at all. So this feels like very foundational. And like using a cooking analogy, I don't even know what I'm doing, but if we were baking a cake, this would be mixing the flour with the water. Is that a cake? No, it's not a cake. It's kind of like a gross mixture that smells really weird. So, but we have to mix it, you know, because otherwise nothing's going to happen. The chemistry is not going to go on. It's not going to start. So, yeah, so that's that kind of analogy. It's just a very preliminary foundational stage. I use the rack sometimes as a painting tool to remove some of the paint that I'm using. And then I have blue, so I'm going to use Payne's Gray. How about that? Perfect example of how to use our two designated blacks. The warm and the cold. So I guide myself with the charcoal. And if you notice, I'm not working by location. I'm working by value. What's the difference? Working by location would be painting this shape right here and adding all the layers and not moving anywhere else until this was done. I would be here until Christmas if I were painting by location. So I have to make sure that I do passes, one pass staining, another pass first notes. I can work faster, I can be more efficient, and I don't, it's better not to rely on our level of discipline because we are master procrastinators, and who knows when we'll be able to engage in this painting again. So we want to make the best of the time that we are engaged, with the process. So to me, working by, I'm using a little bit of the periwinkle. I like to call it periwinkle because it's fancier. Radium blue doesn't mean anything. Radium blue, it's so boring. Periwinkle, my goodness. So yeah, it's a light blue. It's nothing more than, we don't even use this blue anymore. Ultramarine. It's funny how we changed. We switched sides. We ditched partners. Oh, that felt good. And then we moved on. So the French ultramarine is no more. And then we use other blues right now. But the periwinkle is a mixture of ultramarine and white. So I just use that. And then do I want to bring a green? Not yet. So I'm going to make my own green with the Payne's Gray and a little bit of the yellow ochre. One is a neutral version of blue. The other one is a neutral version of yellow. It's not going to be green, but it's just going to be a green. And what I'll do is I will just stain the entire thing. Think big color fields. Nothing is specific. Nothing is extremely compartmentalized. Don't worry about being tidy or exacting. It's not the point. Um, it's not the point of this. The point, going back to the point is just to prime the surface, seal the charcoal. It's the most technical aspect or stage or chapter in the entire process. Um, and also, well, yesterday again we had discussions about different approaches to painting, and uh, there was one approach that was related to psychologically removing the blankness of the paper is very important for a lot of painters. I would argue that it's not only a psychological um, tool to overcome this anxiety of having like empty spaces, but it's good to remove the blank space, because we will make better color decisions when we have something stained already or with a certain value. Um, so it's not just psychological, if you ask me. It's also helpful to make yeah, decisions, color decisions. The minute you have something that's completely white and blank, I would say blank. Um, it affects everything else. It affects your decisions with every other single aspect. Okay, for the skin, I'm gonna go super simple. I'm just gonna use a very traditional color for portraiture, burnt sienna, and some um, turpentine. I'm not invested in spending time right now thinking of flesh tones. I only want to apply a little bit of turpentine with some paint, very watercolor-like, darker to lighter. I'm just gonna block the whole thing. Yeah, that's good. I don't need to do eyes or anything there yet. And this, I'm just gonna bring the same tone, and perhaps with a rack, I'm just gonna make it a little bit lighter. Again, it's not super important how this fills the page or the edges. I'll be able to move things around later. So yeah, just going about my staining layer and trying to apply in a very, I would say, careless, rebellious way, um, non-associating things, making sure my mind is sitting and quiet. I'm just working. You know, sometimes it's, you know, when you're working, it's just like your full senses are focused and you're just doing. You're just doing. Your mind is there. There's no space, and um, that's the energy. I'm just working, adding and applying and all that stuff. There's no room for judgment or decisions or evaluation. I need to do. I need to build. I I think I'm okay with my wash. Oh, well, this is going better than I thought. I don't know. Maybe it's all the painting sessions that we have during the week. Certainly, you know, everything, it's cumulative. Don't underestimate the power of practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm just giving too much, myself too much credit. Jen, uh, do us a favor, just so we don't get too carried away with excellence. So this week I was reading, I forgot where, and I should be a little bit more, a little bit sharper, about the imposter syndrome. Oh yeah, it was all about the Edvard Munch graffiti tag that the Norwegian National Museum finally concluded after centuries, essentially, or decades, I should say, that it was of his own writing. And
Oh, right.
and they were kind of like uh, talking about how genius that was, and how amazing, and his amazing mind, and you know, they were just kind of like naturally, I mean, this is a ploy to brand and bring attention to the collection, and they're doing a great job. But from a painter's point of view, this the message said only a mad person could have painted this, something like that. I use the word imposter syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression, but
Oh yeah, big time.
can you just Wikipedia the first sentence or a couple of sentences, because it kind of like explains um, where we are. All of us as painters, we have a hard time recognizing our own little victories, and when we strike something successful, we deny ourselves of uh, being the authors of that success. It's just so freaking annoying. Anyhow, whenever.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud.
Okay, what do you want to say about it, Jen?
Well, okay, so
I
you
don't
know,
know.
I think this is something that as an as artists that we have lived with our entire lives. And what's funny is, sorry, I'm also getting a text. What's funny is now that I have friends that are, yeah, Mia saying, that's me.
Yeah, no.
Now that I have friends that are deep enough into the corporate world or, into um, any sort of practice that is not necessarily in an arts based world, they find that as well at work.
Oh, like meaning non-creative, you would say.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
That so we are not alone, people. Everyone, I think, is just walking around this earth fearful they're going to get caught. And you know what's funny is, it's not just in careers. Like there are times I'm a mom, and there are times when I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I'm just, Henry at any point could point to me and be like, "What? Like who do you like?" Like this? I don't know. Like, I don't
Right.
just feel like I'm going to be found out at any moment. We're all just winging it.
So funny. No, it's very.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Oh, and we can talk more about it later, obviously, with everyone. But I personally, for me, this is something that it's very important to acknowledge. Very important to also make sure that I accept this is not only part of the process, but also it extends to other factors in life as well. And part of it is also has to do with education. And also, I would say I'm not shifting the blame, but I feel like there is also, since people use the word systemic, there is a systemic um, intent in our culture to foster this idea of imposter syndrome. I don't think it's only us. I think like whether we found teachers that told us we're not good enough, whether we have been denied something or declined or rejected, I feel like it's us, obviously, but there's an environmental factor, and we have to be aware of that, because sometimes I feel like certain groups of people may have more of that systemic push to create imposter syndrome than others, so anyhow, I mean, I'm going on a tangent right now, but yes, we need to rehabilitate ourselves, and that's why we're doing this together, and make sure that that doesn't stop our creativity. We are at our best when we create. So let me just go back to the technique because this is too much preaching. But yeah, I'm just going to start with first notes. We have 5 minutes for the first hour, and we should be doing possibly second notes, but it's okay. This already looks pretty strong. And what I'm going to do is switch to the medium and switch to one of my old hairy guys to kind of like do the job. So I'm shrinking the brush stroke, and I'm increasing the consistency of the paint. So the idea is to build something on top of this that feels like it's blocking out the first layer. So I'm going to be painting wet on wet, and that's the reason why the wash is so important. So I have to change, because if I don't put enough, or if I don't change the medium and the ratio between medium and paint, I'm going to be sort of like stirring this porridge pot like constantly. So I have to start tweaking and changing things in order to build on what I have. So hairy guy, just because I still don't need precision. And I'm going to repeat the same. So essentially, I am a little bit behind, but I'm going to say that the instruction here is to just try to repeat the same order that you did, or similar order that you followed with last stage of sketching, and also the staining. Because part of the reason why we have to find our own ways to make the process easier is anchor things on repetition. If we don't have a strategy or a structure, our minds are going to start standing up and saying, what are you doing? I mean, why are you doing the eyes when you should be doing the paws? Or what about that flower in the background? So if we kind of like set the structure of saying, I'm going darker to lighter, I'm doing it with a sketch, and I'm doing it with the staining, and I'm going to do it also with the first notes. Then it's set, it's done, and I can actually start working. So no one has to argue against that. So again, it's very wet, so perhaps just a little bit of paint will do it. So what I'm doing, I said color fields on the wash. This is a little bit to change the terminology, like color blocks. A little bit more defined. So I'm starting to work with edges. I have another opportunity here to resketch or shuffle or reconsider the things that I've done so far, in the sense that I could make some changes and tweaks. And that's what I love about leaving our sketch open to organic changes. I always felt in regards to switching from drawing to painting, I've seen most tutorials or classes or sessions that they start from a very strong realistic sketch, and they leave very little room to organic changes. And I feel like that's a way of making it very mechanical almost, and not really bringing soul to the process. It's just it doesn't work for me. I prefer to organically, or leave things open to organic changes, because I know that I'm going to see things differently. So why do I don't like to settle, let's put it this way, commitment with painting. It's those two things don't go well together. So to me, leaving things open to a more organic approach enriches and amplifies the idea of creativity. So I don't settle for a specific sketch, so I can make changes as I go along. And it just becomes much more alive. It's just, I don't like to use this word, but it's better. It's more genuine. It has more character. It reflects more our own interior life, even, I would say, that abstract. So color blocks. I'm not doing details, and it's so wet that I don't need to use the medium. But if it's not wet enough, if it's dry, then use a little bit of medium. And again, I'm just gonna stick to the plan. The plan is to work from darker to lighter and do color fields, and not getting caught up with too much with details. So I think that's the plan. I'm going to stick with it. And then the idea of sticking with the plan, it's not to make it boring or meaningless. It's just to foster this idea of work. We have to build layers. We have to set the foundation. There's no interpretation. There's no room to interpret things at the early stages. It's the hardest part of a painting or any creative process. It's the one that requires more decisiveness and focus. Anything that is involved with judgment, it's just a diversion and a distraction. And in the end, it just slows down the process. So yeah, that's why structure is not about idea when we talk about creative process, if you ask me, especially at the very beginning of the process. I just want to work. I want to add work. I want to build. I want to set the proper foundation if I can. So I'm not going to do the armchair, or maybe I should. I'm just going to imagine the space. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. So that is, maybe I'll just work also the color a little bit. And there's some darker area. So we are simplifying. I think that's very important. And I used to mention those two words or concepts more, and I feel like I should mention them more often. Simplification, repetition are our friends. Simplify, repeat. Why are they our friends, or are they our friends? It's because we make things easy, in a stage where broad generalization is what we need the most. So simplification, obviously, just because we want to make sure we are as efficient as possible with the time that we have. So that means that we have to simplify. If we want to be efficient and work fast, or kind of like accomplish as much as we can, we have no choice. We have to simplify, and that's good. So it just kind of like sets a strong foundation and makes the process more enjoyable later. Repetition, why? Because since we're not committing to a specificity, we're not quantifying things at this stage. So we have an opportunity to rebuild, recreate, bring down and build up again much more easily. So simplification, repetition, don't underestimate the power of these two simple concepts to make your work much more efficient. And I use the word work. There's no judgment here. We just have to build. And I am going to have fun with the blues. So I am stepping a little bit ahead, and well, not really. First notes is when we actually start studying the color. So yeah, it's not a bad idea to, if you can, kind of like test your color, because at this stage we start driving our colors towards something that feels harmonious regarding the painting. Whoa, so this is very light. So what do? I like to work with the cellophane just because I like to test the colors and study the colors. And I noticed that the first thing, as I mentioned, when you mix colors, try to first take care of the value. So we talked about it in the previous, and Jen, you were so helpful when you asked how do you do that and why is that important. So yeah, this is simpler. Just to find out how light or dark it is, it feels a little bit simpler. So what I'm doing right now is just going about the value of the tone, because otherwise, if we don't study the color, we're going to end up painting with unprocessed colors. And the whole point of creating a color palette, it's not just to have all the colors right there. It's to process the different combinations of colors that palette can give us. And there are infinite possibilities. But unless we study, observe, reflect, and unpack the colors, we will stick with the raw material, and the painting is not going to move to its full potential. All right. So I feel like there's more purple here than I thought, and I'm so happy that this is a good example of bringing both light and dark. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of pink, So once I have this idea, and I'm going to avoid bringing some saturated colors for now. So I'll work with these tones, and then I'll start adding more later. So it's a little bit purpley. So what I'm doing is blocking out, remember, color blocking. First notes, I'm still on first notes. I have to sometimes, I like to stick with the strategy, because then I don't have to think about what I'm doing, if I know what I'm doing, or if I don't know what I'm doing. It's just funny. I mean, it's funny how Jen and I have, talking about rehabilitating, sometimes we find ourselves welcoming new painters, and their biggest obstacle, it's not their capability to draw and paint. Their biggest obstacle is their unconscious, because it's not willingly the case. Their unconscious unwillingness to accept a strategy. It's this is how it reflects to us. I don't know what I'm doing, and we have found ourselves with this situation a few times, and we have to kind of like debrief after, because it's a pretty strong position when verbally someone says, I don't know what I'm doing in a creative process. It's confronting. As facilitators of possibilities, they're just putting a block in front of you already. I don't know what I'm doing. It's already such a negative and difficult thing to overcome. So, and again, it's unconscious. It's not the person is not that they came to the class to ruin the session. It's an unconscious way that has been, for whatever reason that we don't know, and it's not our business, that has been set and or wired. So then what we try to do, and take this not only as an anecdote, but also as a way of reflecting on our own walls when we raise them up against ourselves. Then what we try to do is kind of like provide a path. We say, okay, well, do this. So we try to respond to that wall with a strategy. Why don't you use this? Or perhaps now kind of like try just doing this single step, whether it's use a single color, or try to shape this up, or I don't know, we try to be specific, because I feel like specificity, it's something that feels like could make this overcome. But sometimes the wiring is so hardcore rooted in our minds that that's not enough. Not only it's not enough, but it triggers the opposite effects. Like, you know what? No, it's not working. I don't know what I'm doing. So immediately that receptive antenna of like saying, okay, I'm listening to you and I'm going to try it. It's totally bungled up and damaged. It doesn't work. So we try a few times, but then at some point that, and I'm going to say this, that disability to be receptive is so strong that, and you've seen me, Jen, that I automatically, I switch off. There's no way that I can rehabilitate or find a little hole with that strong wiring. I don't know. Am I being too crazy? Jen, what do you think?
No, I mean, it is. It's basically saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't want to figure it out. Because it's just easier to completely continue to deny all of this.
And I feel like, to be fair, I invite all of us kind of like reflect on when this sort of like thing happens, because it happens to all of us. And so why am I saying this? The reason is because I mentioned this because it's a good idea to kind of like stick with sort of like a very simple script structure, color block. Don't think about what it looks like. Don't think about how good you are or you are not. Um, Consider, it's work that it's mindless work. It needs to be done. You need to add it. You need to color block. Don't compare yourself. And this is part of the work thing of being creative. Being creative, it's not sort of like being a magician. It's just you have to put on the work. And yeah, so anyhow, that's what I'm trying to do. And also, I think it's not a bad idea to kind of like go over this, especially as I said, at the very beginning of our process, which we are still at the beginning. It's the hardest part. We have to build from scratch. There's so many unknowns. It's so uncertain. We don't know how this work is going to turn out. We feel insecure. We feel we're not able to do it. And we are afraid that, we're going to be the ones behind everyone else. And so it's important to acknowledge that this is real and present. But at the same time, making things simple. And going back to the reason why I opened this kind of like babushka, simplification and repetition, your friends. Do it again. Do it again. Simplify it. Do you see a face? Don't do the eyes. Do an oval. Do a potato shape. You're not happy with a potato shape. Do it again. It's easier when you're not committed to details, when you're not trying to search for likeness or have a very hard and complex and demanding and unrealistic criteria, saying, you know what, I'm not going to be good unless this looks like Joe Biden, and that's the exact same dog. All right, so I'm just adding first notes and a little bit of a transition to second notes, and then I'm just going to move to the face. And perhaps with this process, I will be able only to do first and second notes, first notes, but we'll see. I'm not in a rush, and then I just want to enjoy the process. I'd rather enjoy this in a slower pace than feel anxiety because I'm not going fast enough and it's not looking built enough or recognizable enough. So it's sort of like a choice, and it literally is a choice. What do you want? Do you want to sort of like go slowly, take your time, and then try to extract as much experience as you can from each process or each stage? Or you don't have time and this is your only shot, and your life is our lives are very complicated, and you want to do as much as possible. So it's really there's nothing good or bad between those two choices, but it's really comes down to yeah. So I'm going to start with the flesh notes. The first thing that I'm doing is just testing the burnt sienna. It's too dark, so I'm bringing the ecru as a tone to, and maybe I need like a slightly less hairy guy, because that area is a little bit smaller. So I'm just bringing my other, okay, that's too dark. So maybe I need to bring a little bit, I mean, it's too light. I'm gonna bring a little bit of the raw umber because I feel like yeah, I'm getting a little closer. So I think value wise, I'm okay. I need to now, it just feels very, it just feels, I need, it's a little bit dark. So this is kind of like moving the needle. It's sort of like, okay, so I think that's good. So I just did the darker version, and I needed to study it because otherwise I would have used the single burnt sienna. And although that's totally fine, I just like to constantly, if I can, raise the bar every time that I do a painting. I want to make sure that I get better at every opportunity that I have to create a painting from scratch. So to me, studying the colors makes me realize that unless I do that, I'm going to start, again, the raw palette. And it's just going to look like too simplistic or too, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that, but yeah. So I like to study the colors. I am fascinated by the idea that my brain thinks that I'm doing something correct and it's accurate when it couldn't be further from the truth. And I love to surprise myself thinking, oh my gosh, I was so off. It's a humbling experience, and it's also interesting. We think like we know everything, and then we're so smart, but then I love to surprise myself and thinking, oh, nope, that was just, you couldn't be more off with that tone. This is to me what part of what learning means, you know, constantly not doubting myself, obviously, but constantly challenging what I'm 100% sure of. So I'm just bringing this darker notes, unblocking, bringing darker notes, and realizing that the light direction comes this way, and maybe I'm just gonna make this a little bit lighter. So I'm not blending or anything right now. And I don't need to study every single tone. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply this here right now, another tone in between. And when I go back to second notes, I'll be able to fine tune the differences in value. Sometimes I feel like what happens is that we start a process, and that's what I meant by being difficult, these states being difficult. We start a process, and then because we start, we feel, oh my gosh, I just made something that looks so disgusting. Oh, and then we feel vulnerable and exposed, and immediately we retreat, and we'll think, uh-oh, that's, you know, that's not for me. I'm done. I'm not. And part of overcoming that aspect is to learn and accept to feel vulnerable when we start something from scratch and it looks like crap. Yeah, so most likely it will. And, you know, but that's not a reflection of who you are. It looks like crap because we just put a bunch of things there. What do we expect? It's almost like, you know, we need to be a little bit realistic in the sense, you know, that the beginning of its process, it's not going to look great. And that doesn't mean like we suck. It just means that we need to work more on it. It means like we can't give up. It means like what's the expression? We owe it to ourselves to kind of like continue working and see where that journey is going to take us, because otherwise we'll always feel like unless it's perfect, we're not good. Nothing kills that creative process more than that. So just dump those brushstrokes there, and don't worry about what it looks like right now. It's totally fine. It's still we're building, so it's okay. We can go back at it again. Repetition, simplification. No one's and I feel like, you know, the one of the benefits of working remotely, I would say that we can preserve that sense of privacy when we dump things on the painting and we feel awful about them. At least we don't have anyone kind of like watching, or because that's an added challenge. So I just want to see, because the hair is white, but I don't want to work by association because it's white, but I think Biden has white hair, so I'm going to use titanium white. Well, not really the case. It's darker than that. It's not really white. It's a little bit, there's some brown in it. So here, again, this is what I mean by testing. Whoa, totally brown. A little bit more burnt sienna. Let me see. First, I thought it was violet. Okay, I'm just getting somewhere around that area. So perhaps a little bit more. There's no way. Well, yes. Okay, I think that's good. Maybe some gray. It's a little bit too saturated. Let me see. And now it needs a little bit of lightness. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so that's good. I'm just gonna bring this stone for now, and then a little bit darker, and then I'll just move to a second note in the face. And I'm gonna check, I'm checking the time. I'm gonna check the time. I'm checking the time. I'm gonna take 10 minutes to build as much as I can, second note wise. And then the last half an hour, I'll just try to start building some second notes. But yeah, so don't worry what it looks like. taking advantage of the benefits of being involved in the creative process is learning how to find strength in our decisions and standing up for those moments in which we feel the most vulnerable. I will never be able to repeat what I just said, but
I'm trying to write it down as fast as I can.
Okay.
Learning how to find strength in our decisions and something about being vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll just replay it like that.
I'll make it up. I'll make it up.
Okay. All right. So here, oh, that's very dark. So I'm just bringing some white. I'm being totally, I'm inspired by Berthe Morisot's painting. She was a badass painter. I love how the work looks like there is a sense of anger almost in the hatching, you know, this absolutely incredibly well composed images of gardens. They were exploding with energy. The greenie wasn't just like a flat green. I just love how it's so confident. I felt really inspired like yesterday, just bringing images of that, that I almost feel like, you know, just I want to do that too. I would just want to get inspired by that confidence almost. So I'm just making a mess right here. And that's okay. Again, part of the advantage is to, learn to be, to stand. All right, as I said, I don't know how I said it, but anyhow. Oh, there's a little bit of darkness. And this is like the moment in which my insecurity kicks in. I'm like, oh no, and now this looks awful. I need to fix this. I see this, the cheek, oh my gosh. And that's insecurity because I'm acting right now as if someone's gonna pop in the room and catch me and say, what? This is not what I thought of you. That's exactly where I'm coming from. It's a behavior that I need to, I mean, I recognize it. I'm like, you know, I don't want to be caught in the act of being amateurish almost. We have this fear, oh my gosh, this looks so awful. I better just fix it. And then immediately kind of like rush. All right, I'm going to leave it because I start seeing things and I want to start like fixing this. But as I said, I have 8 minutes, 7. I'm going to bring the greens and the blues because I feel like that's very important. But I'm going to leave this the way it is. The greens and the blues, again, we highly recommend not only that you shop for color, we shop for so many things. And we are painters. Our shopping list should consist of these categories. Number 1, color. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, everything else. But as painters, we encourage you to build your color library, get colors, even if you think you're never going to use them. There's such joy in buying color, you know? So we slowly, over years, kind of like built our tiny sort of like library that looks like this. But we ask you or encourage you to kind of like categorize, I'm going to use sap green, the colors that you have by colors, by color categories. So sap green, and it has, the sap green has a lot of ecru. I'm going to try to bring those 2 colors together and do that. Again, I'm on first notes. I should do first notes right down here, but I just want to do this first notes right up here. And in order to tone it down, because the green, the sap green, any color out of the tube, it's way too saturated. I'm going to bring a little bit of the brown, just a tiny bit, which is the opposite in temperature. And it could be any brown, but the redder the brown, the better. Because that automatically tones it down and makes it a little, yeah, ooh, that looks good. Where's my hairy guy? Here. So let me bring this color, and I'm just going to block it out. Just gonna block it out. I'm gonna block it out. I think that is, yeah, I'm gonna block this out with this sap green with a little bit of the burnt sienna to counterbalance that pigmentation, because I don't want the green to look like out of a tube. It just looks not thoughtful enough or well thought. Yeah. And again, I intend to take opportunities in every painting to raise the bar of my own work. So, and one of those bars is to try to engage in the subtleties of color differences and not settle just for a single formula. I think that's part of, I don't want to paint the same painting. If I just use the same colors out of a palette, all my paintings will look exactly the same. And although I'm interested or I love seeing my style kind of like peek through, I want to make sure that each palette is unique and different. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. Okay, so this is okay. And I'm gonna move to the lighter version of the green, and I'm excited. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the process. I think this is also part of having a structure. Having a structure means just focusing on work, just plain and simple. There's no magic or kind of like thing that appears out of nowhere and then we nailed it because whatever outside factor that we can control. No, we can control this. We are controlling this because we are adding work to it. And then we'll be able to make our own little magic tricks later. But at this stage, I'm just kind of like building and trying to follow, yes, I wouldn't say a script, but kind of like a strategy or a workflow that allows me to be persistent, continue working, and then when we engage in second notes, then that's when we'll be able to open up this workflow to more of an engaging, and I love that stage. The second notes is the most wonderful part because then I can say, oh, well, I can tweak this and I can move this. There's a comfort in that stage when we do the work before. It feels like we can really relax a little bit and know that everything that we do will be supported by the rest of the painting. So I'm trying to achieve that stage, and I know that in order to achieve it, I need to get some things down first. Get some things down. All right, there's more saturation of green down there. Do I need to do it? I don't know. I'm a little bit scared. I'm just going to put it like neutral for now because I don't want this to be, it would be nice to have like a counterbalance between those two, but I'm not going to think about it right now. I'm just going to put a little bit more sap green here. I like the gradation and the rhythm from closer to further away. It's so exquisite and so interesting. This kind of like sfumato, high key, almost like see-through, kind of like gauzy green. It's amazing, and it creates such beautiful contrast between the darker backlit areas of his shoulder and his face. I love this game right here. I love this game right here. So, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. There's so much that I need to do. I'm glad that I'm able to, I'm loving this image much more right now. I just feel like in the end, I think it'll pay off. I think it'll pay off. We'll see what happens. But all right, final, some white. Do I put a little bit of white? Yeah, why not? I think that's the time. Enter white, titanium white. Always hold on or hold off on white, essentially because it's much harder to make it darker later. So if you start using white oil paint, it's just going to give you problems. It's going to give you problems and you'll feel frustrated, and it's not the end of anything. Yeah, I think that's okay. There's some white here, and I'm just gonna bring it. Um, and oh my gosh, I just had a flash. I mean, I'm gonna be like um, the cheese of the cheese right now, but I was like remembering or thinking of the Queen's Gambit, which I finally finished, and I loved it so much, and I'm so glad that I finished it, and how she approached. I mean, obviously, this is cheese, okay? She approached the process and how important was to study and do work. You know, read books, be thorough, memorize things. So I love how there was a balance between the raw cleverness of her character, obviously, but that wasn't enough. She needed to work at it. It wasn't kind of like a granted gift that you get and then, okay, you're the best. No, you need to work at it. You need to memorize. You need to contrast. You need someone eyes and thoughts and from outside to tell you what they think. Everything contributes to that brilliance, that potential that gets fulfilled. And cheese. All right, so I'm good with first notes, and I'm only 2 minutes beyond my strategy. So I'm so excited that I have a full half hour to go back to what? Let me just decide, because it's important to step back and then see where you're at, and then I really enjoy making creative decisions, and over time, we encourage you to shift your attention from results to process. I know that everyone says this, and it's so hard to grasp or not understand. I mean, but really experience it. But it's a matter of like over time realizing that making creative decisions gives me joy. I love changing. I love deciding. I love finding new criteria. I love thinking around how this could potentially be and what if I do this and that. That to me, it's the joy of the process. And then there's a result. And the result, I'm not going to waste time to think or analyze or anything. There's a result, and that's it. That happens, but that's not my focus. I'm focused on making decisions and establishing sort of like a dialogue between my decisions and my own process. All right, second notes. I'm gonna I'm gonna continue using maybe the smaller brush, and then what I do is within the area of the first notes that feels very color blocked or pixelated, I'm gonna try to create a wider range of values, mostly values. I know the color, I know that we essentially we are becoming more sensitized to the variations of color just because we spend literally an hour and a half looking at the painting. I mean, I'm sorry, at the image. So now naturally our capacity to understand distinctions is much sharper and much more developed. And that's why I prefer to leave things open organically rather than just kind of like stick to a sketch that I trace or whatever and then fill in the blanks. I don't find that being a reflection of how things really happen when we go through the process, we get acquainted with the colors, we start finding relationships, and we are really finding distinctions, nuances, and things that were not visible at the very beginning. So, but I have to choose two focal points. And I think what I'm going to do, my gosh, I'm just going to, you know what? I talked about the vulnerability. I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable, and I'm not going to work on this now. Anyone coming to the room, this is me, and this looks terrible, but I'm going to leave it like that, and I'm going to work on the dog, because I think conceptually that was the image. If I would have decided to work on this first, it would be out of insecurity, just because it's not strong enough. It doesn't feel formed. But I'm going to stay true to the actual concept, the conceptual element of this. Sorry. And I'm going to work on it on major. Yeah, so repetition again. So this time I'm just gonna repeat, but there's a different black. So I feel like now I can just mix the warm and the light because I really want darkness. I barely use any paint. I mean, any medium, I'm sorry, any medium. And I'm repeating again. The reason why repetition is so good, it's because we can rely on it and we don't feel like we're just not knowing where to head and what to do. But I know that this is a new chapter and I'm going to use repetition and I'm going to start painting on the 4 iteration on the same space. And then I'm going to change that with adding less medium and mixing more blacks so it becomes darker. It's not, it's out of a way of facilitating the movement and progression of the process, so it doesn't get stalled in wasteful sort of like a judgment and saying, oh well, I don't know, that doesn't look good, so maybe I'll just I'm gonna work on it. So that's what I'm doing right now. And there's always, when I go back to a place, there's always an opportunity to change it. I feel like the mouth, the line between the lips should be a little bit higher. I see it now. I see it now. So I'm just gonna go for it and change that. So I'm gonna bring like a darker gray and then bring that line, maybe a little bit more gray. Bring that line a little bit higher. Yeah, definitely, that was needed. So, and that's an example of how our first lines are always going to be relative. I think that's the best expression. They're never permanent or fixed. They're mutable. They're ever changing, and we will see them differently when we have more elements on our painting. That's what I'm doing right now. So this is a little bit lighter. So I'm going to try to create variations of this black. So right now I'm just bringing this area right here. And notice what I'm doing. It just made sense. I went from broad to specific. So I'm really having fun finding different variations within this like small area. I don't have to face the expectation of changing everything or feeling like if this is sort of like a Jenga tower, and if I just pull one stick, then my whole painting is gonna crumble down. No, I have a solid foundation. This is a good structure. And what I'm doing right now, it's just amping up the potential that I have in each of the areas that are now soundly set. So yeah. All right. So I love Jenga, by the way, but yeah, let's not apply Jenga to things in life. That's not gonna work. I'm still working on that, you guys. So, all right, a little bit lighter. Yeah, and then maybe with a clean brush, what I'm doing is just softening the edges. I like this nice transition. This is the stage when we can start blending. And you know, since I'm working on the edges, the first thing that I'm doing is without paint, I'm just blending or thinning out the edges so they naturally blend with area adjacent area. So I mentioned things about, which I didn't talk about, how it's important to blend on your palette more than blending on the painting. And in fact, we do the opposite. You know, it's funny how we find oil more difficult because we think like it's the medium. But I think it's important to understand that that's not the reason why it's more difficult. The reason why it's more difficult is because we use it in such a weird way. So if we blend more on the painting, of course, this is going to be a nightmare medium. I mean, what do we expect? Everything's going to start kind of like getting muddy, and we will just kind of like give up. So the idea is to understand that it may require a little bit of a shift. Blend more in your palette. Blend more in your palette before you sort of like apply the paint on the painting. And you'll be amazed how much more control you're gonna have. And what I'm doing right now is kind of bringing some ecru, because I feel like I can block this out. And then I'll do a little bit of blending. But yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna spend the rest of the session just painting the highs and lows of doing the second notes on major. And yesterday we were just kind of like talking about no one really knows. This morning, Kian was taking a shower and I was kind of like telling him, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And that's the reason why Champ is named Champ. And then I said, you know, major, nobody knows. They were not publicly acknowledging that's the case. But some people think that Beau Biden, Joe Biden's son, who died from brain cancer, he was a major in where was he in the army? He was which army was he in?
Which like division?
Division or yeah. Oh my gosh.
Which armed forces?
Which armed forces? Yes.
Okay, looking
I think it was the kind of like the domestic. I know that they were talking with the riot nonsense. The National Guard. The National Guard. I think he was in the National Guard.
I accidentally just looked up Hunter Biden. Hold on 1 second.
Just because I'm very ignorant. I didn't know that there was one of the divisions that was meant to kind of like be focused on the national territory. The National Guard doesn't go.
Yeah, Delaware Army National Guard.
Right. Yeah. So he was a major in the National Guard. Yeah. And some people, because they got the dog after he passed away, I believe.
Also in. Okay. I mean, I don't know anything either. But okay, so it says United States Army and then Delaware Army National Guard. His rank was major. He was in the Iraq War.
So he did.
Iraq War, yes.
Okay, so it's not just National Guard. It's not just domestic, is it?
It could be, but I believe maybe he served both because his years of service were 2002 to 2015.
2019. Oh.
And he got 3 awards: a Legion of Merit posthumously, also the Delaware Conspicuous Service Cross, that's also posthumously, and then the Bronze Star Medal. I believe, I'm pretty sure okay, I'm just making sure before I say this incorrectly. He did go to Iraq, yes.
Oh, I believe, yeah, I think this was mentioned. I mean, talk about someone not bragging.
I know.
And someone who has nothing bragging like about everything.
I know, for real.
We don't even know exactly what he did. And
I know.
And then in the meantime,
definitely. Right.
The other guy is like,
I know about Ivanka's clothing line, for God's sake.
Oh, friend.
So true. Right.
Anyhow, so yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things that people think he was named for, because he was a major. And then, I just wanted to mention that when I told Kian about that, he was like, oh my gosh, that's so freaking sad. You know, he thought it was, the first one was kind of like uplifting champ because of his dad saying, you know, pick yourself up or whatever, be a champ or something like that. But then the name Major, it's, yeah, it's pretty sad. But, and I thought, you know what? I don't think it's sad. I think that's wonderful. But he thought it was the saddest thing. Um, all right, so I am just time-wise, okay, perfect. 20 minutes, yeah, we're gonna go a little bit extra here. So I'm determined to bring highs and lows, and what I'm doing is trying to pixelate. I don't blame that. I don't blend, sorry. I don't blend that much. I try to pixelate. I'm running out of black. I notice that things drawing-wise are shifting and changing. And I love when that happens. I don't feel like I've learned to enjoy the realizations. Like I'm doing something and all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, the nose is like too low, and then I relish in that discovery. I welcome it, and I feel like, you know, I don't think like that, but there's almost an enjoyment in finding out something that I didn't find out before. I don't see it as something that makes me want to give up. I see it as something that excites me, and I feel, oh my gosh, so now I can do something. I can do something about it. I can act on it. I can change it. Yeah, I think, I don't know. That sounded a little bit like what is it called? This very interesting concept. I forgot exactly the reason why I came across it, but it was so good to read and hear about it. The concept of toxic positivity, which is a term in psychology, I believe. Look at me, kind of like talking like that, defines positivity for positivity's sake. When someone says, you know, you have to look at the bright side, you have to, there's so much to be grateful for. And it's a passive aggressive way of denying your true feelings. Toxic positivity is when someone gives you no room to be concerned about anything. It just tells you, you know what, life's beautiful. That's toxic positivity, by the way. You can do it. You know what, I don't know, messages on that note. And I've learned that in order to be more constructive and realistic, it's important to acknowledge the feelings that are becoming obstacles. Realize or affirm or yeah, just acknowledge the fact that, you know, you may be going through a lot or there are some difficulties. Acknowledge that. Bring empathy to that recognition and say, yes, you're right, this is awful and you're going through the worst. And then say, but this is what you can do about it, or this is what you could try. But without the acknowledgement, there's no positivity. If it's only you can do it, life's beautiful, and not acknowledging, then that's toxic positivity. I love that because let me see if I can remember why I said that. Oh yeah, because when I said, you know what, I relish and enjoy finding things that I didn't see before. It almost sounds as I don't acknowledge the complexity, the difficulty, the frustration, the fact that this is challenging, it's confronting me, it's just revealing things that, or exposing things that I'm not happy about. And I want to make sure that that gets acknowledged in the process. It is true, it is difficult. It's not easy. It's just, you know, it exposes our vulnerability, insecurity, and we feel lost sometimes. We want to hit the panic button. But at the same time, what I'm saying is that those are opportunities. They're chances that I find to do something different, to try something new, to see it and then do something about it. So I try to not apply only this toxic positivity to everything and say, no, everything's fine, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. Like, for example, everything's going to be all right is a toxic positivity message. What do you do with it? Everything's going to be all right. When someone tells me that, I'm like, okay, and so okay. I don't know what to do with it. It's useless. It's not only useless, but it almost makes me feel like, I should kind of like deny myself and my own feelings and not and forget about what I'm feeling because it doesn't matter. No. All right, let's just go back to technique. Shall we? Just slowly moving to the other side of the edge. And I feel like now I'm doing this and I want to stop because I feel like this is not part of the plan. And I'm getting tired of working on the dog and I just want to move somewhere else. Let me just kind of like spend some time bringing some highs and lows on the actual edge here. So I'm going to close the gap between the background and the figure. That's number one, because I feel like that will automatically integrate both things, at least initially integrate them. So I'm going to do this on both sides. And I'm not going to work on greens or darkening greens because I feel like I need to take care of that first. And I haven't, possibly you guys, I should have talked more about fur and how to paint fur. And I'm so sorry. So I'm going to do a mini capsule. Follow the direction of the hair growth. First thing, you need to find out where and how the hair growth goes, because we have a tendency of making the same direction. And then we forget about the dynamic and the structure and the architecture of the hair growth on fur. Look at the edges as well. But before the edges, I would say sometimes we look at texture before we look at volume. So the fur, it's not just texture. The fur is texture applied to a volume. So we encourage you to look at whatever it is, the head, the nose, the belly, the back, and find out first the highs and lows of the volume of that area. Pretend that there's no texture there and recognize that there is a structure that's based on light direction. So that would be the foundation of painting fur, finding out that there are highs and lows and not everything's uniform. After that, when you may use a little bit of like darker notes in certain areas and a little bit of darker notes on others, try to follow the same hair growth that you see, because on fur there are so many kind of like variations and flows of the hair. It's not just a very single direction or just one direction. So try to apply hatched brush strokes, darker first and then lighter over it. You may have to do a few layers of darker and lighter over each other because maybe a single one won't be enough. Also know that you don't have to recreate the idea of fur texture everywhere. Remember the word simplification, very important. You may want to consider creating more of a density or specificity. Yes, specificity of fur in certain areas that maybe come forward more or become part of the focal point, but don't feel obligated to create the illusion of fur everywhere with the exact same definition. And then really important, I would say, as another chapter, check how the fur acts or acts on the edges of a shape. That's crucial. Sometimes we make them really, really hard. We make like a found edge super hard and it looks collaged. But with fur, there's always a fuzzy edge, a way of the fur to float or almost hover on that edge. We don't really know where the actual split is. So always look for edge quality when you paint fur for many reasons. If you have volume, creating a fuzzy edge will give you the illusion of the volume continuing behind the area that we don't see. So it's very important that you don't stop abruptly on the edges of fur, because you're going to immediately flatten that volume and create a single layer flat. So edges are crucial, and more so when there's hair growth involved. So we want to make sure that it creates the illusion. Like, for example, right up here, I have to work on it, obviously. And then he has very thin hair, like on the edge, and creates a lighter area. If I don't work on this edge, it's just going to look like I cut out a paper doll and then I just collage it right here. There will be no illusion of the head continuing. And again, I reinforce or bring attention to the word illusion. We are creating an illusion of a volume. To create the illusion, we have to use some kind of like magic tricks. And one of the magic tricks, which is not magic, it's the fact that we can create fuzziness along the edge, and that creates the illusion of the volume of the head continuing behind an area that we don't see on the paper. So I think that would be my advice. Stay away from regular stuff. You know, like I feel like this is way too regular, this edge, and there are more of a serpentine quality to the direction of that patchy area or that space. So look for serpentines in your fur, so they don't become like arches or straight lines or horizontal lines. So when you put all these things together, taking care of the volume, making sure that there's a composition of definition on fur, simplification applied to certain areas that are not that important or part of the focal point, creating edges that create the illusion of continuation behind it. All these combined together will work synergetically. I don't know if that's a word that I can use, synergetically. Oh my gosh, sometimes I just bite more than I can chew, but I love it. I'm among friends, so I can do it. If you're watching from the future, this is it. Take it or live it. Talk about what is it? Fighting against the imposter syndrome. You know, to stand by your actions and take credit for them because they're valid. All right, I think that was my capsule of fur, which possibly should have taken like 50% of the time, but I just went on major tangents. But anyhow, so I think we can go over also during the Roofless Ink Colloquium as well. Maybe that could be a good theme, painting fur and tricks about it. It's like any other texture. Don't let the texture go up the criteria list because it's not on top. We think fur, okay, you need to paint fur. So volume first, edge quality, important. Simplification, I need to bring some of the blue. Like for example, this is another idea of how dark, how the edges, I see them changing. I need to shade this a little bit more. I think that's good. And I need possibly, I'm gonna bring some zinc white. It's a good paint to have during closure moments, just because it's not giving me whiteout effect, and it can lighten. It could even be great for blending on the painting. So I'm blending safely here because I just want to lift the value a little bit more. I wanted to create, let's kind of like bring a little blending with the old hairy guys are so good at blending. They're so good at blending. Clean the brush. I am blending, but I'm blending on site, but not stirring. Well, I am stirring, not adding too much. So meaning like I'm working with what I've got. I don't add more paint. Sometimes we just constantly add paint all the time, at all times, because we think that's what painting is. Just you got to keep adding paint, but that's not the case. Sometimes we have enough paint. We just have to tweak it. So I'm just blending the edges here. I'm just blending the edges. So you want to create this idea of a little bit of space between the figure's shoulders and the mouth. I think I'm happy with, so far, I'm happy with this. It's challenging. I need to, and I'm going to work on this for 5 more minutes. So we're not going to take a break yet because we came in a little bit later. So let me just, whoa. That's way too dark. What happens when this happens? So I just wrap my finger. I wrap my finger with the rag, and I try to remove the excess oil. And then I just go back in with some paint, and I just go over it. Boom. I think that's good. And I think it's a different color. I'm not gonna work too much on it, but I feel like I wanna create more variations, because this, if you notice, this almost reads like an object. This doesn't feel like part of the fur. Just so cut out and so regular that my eyes almost see this as a single object. So I need to integrate it. Let's kind of like work on this challenge. How to integrate it. So create more transitions. So I'm just gonna bring more darker notes here. A little bit darker notes. Yeah, already kind of like it's breaking that sharp, hard edge. Okay, I think that's good. And then also at the same time, I need to bring some darker notes inside so it doesn't feel as regular. Yeah, same thing here. I need to break in and create a little bit more irregularity. Yeah, I think that's a little bit more integrated. Let's just go back with some of these fuzzy notes. This sfumato almost. And I think that, and definitely the bottom of this shape is darker because again, the idea of volume. So I'm applying what I just explained, that sometimes it's not about the actually lightness of hair, but more about the integration of the texture to a volume. That's a better categorization. Volume first. Hair, it's like the icing on the cake. But if you don't get, or if you don't have the illusion of volume, hair will feel gimmicky and almost like a fake. So it's about prioritizing, and that might require changing some wires in our brains, because we feel like, you know, hair, it's the be all and end all of fur, and it's not. All right, I'm just gonna bring some darkness here, and I'm working on this rhythmic transition. It's a little bit darker. And I think that now reads a little bit more like a fold. It's still not quite there. I feel like I need to bring, the shape is bothers me now. So I need to push it out a little bit more. So I'm just gonna bring this element out a little bit more. Oops, a little bit more out. Okay, and maybe closing some of the charcoal gaps that I have. Oh, yeah. Okay, I think that's good. I think that's good. So to recap, I would say that I've worked on second notes only on this area. So going back to, or kind of like retracing the process, I did the sketch, the shading, transition, or the staining, perhaps like first notes. And then I spent the last half an hour working on second notes, meaning variations of values. I haven't introduced any new colors, and I feel like I want to go back at it later after I do second notes on other areas and bring more, because there's a green cast and perhaps there's a little bit more of a lighter, darker note here. So again, look what I'm doing, following the direction of the growth. So here, when it comes down to fur, like actual strokes, rather than just catching randomly to create more like the less of a blocked out area. Let me put it this way. I try to be a little bit more disciplined than any other aspects and truly follow what I see in terms of the direction of the growth, because that will create a sort of like a flow that will contribute to the illusion of hair growth on fur. So I would say fur and hair in general, brushstroke direction takes a little bit more of a center stage. It's more important. In other areas, I feel like non-conforming, I talk about being non-conforming in the direction to avoid reading like a solid area may apply. But with this, with fur and hair, I think a brushstroke direction is it's a good way. It's a good way to go, or it should be high up. And oh, I'm so happy. I feel like the eye, I'm just gonna, I want to work on the eye, bring a little bit of the highlight. But Jen, how are you feeling? I didn't even interact with you. My gosh, I monopolized your time.
No, you were amazing. I took a ton of notes, so it was great.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you always bring such great comments and notes. I feel I cannibalized the entire session.
No, there was one point that I almost interrupted you because your acting was so good that I like my heart rate started to quicken, like that something went wrong. You were talking how, you know, that your power of association and how you can look at something and be like, oh my gosh, I've messed up. Like, this is terrible. And when you did it, your acting was so strong that I was like, oh no, what's wrong? What happened?
All right. Give me the part, Jen.
That's right. You earned it, my friend. You got it. Very authentic.
Let me just take this moment to congratulate you again about your the show, your part in it, and how much love you got, and the director reposting the gratefulness and also the GIF and being on the cover. How do you say the placeholder, the image placeholder of the show?
Thank you.
That's huge. You looked fantastic. And yeah, there's so much.
20 years, people. 20 years. Henry said, he said, how long did it take you to do that? And I said it was one day, and then I said, wait, no, it was 20 years. I'm confused because I remember you say, when people ask you how long did it take you to paint that, and you say, my entire life.
Good. Well done. Good. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, thanks. Yeah, and thanks for taking the notes. And I think we could just take a quick break, 10 minutes. So let's reconvene. It's 1:10 here. Let's do 1:20. And I know Hania joined us from the UK, and we're so thrilled and excited, and humbled. So let us know if you're gonna hang out for a while, or if you're just kind of like taking off, because we want to be as productive.
She's not. She was just listening tonight, so she doesn't have anything to show us. She's gonna work over the weekend. So
okay, perfect. Yeah, and so you can text Jen and just if you have anything. We want to make sure that we are respectful with the time zone and also your schedule. So yeah, so we'll start with Beth, if you're still hanging, and take 10 minutes, please. Drink. Well, first of all, stretch. Don't stop painting. Drink, stretch, or stretch, drink, and use the bathroom, and stuff your face with something. And then let's just get back together at 1:20 our time. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.